When you were talking about how women call men controlling and insecure and all those things, I feel like women have more expectations, and that's why they come across manipulative. You're one of these women with standards,
right,
and a man says something to you and you genuinely think it's controlling to the point you tell him that's controlling. Your standard should kick in and be like, I don't want to be with someone like this, and you should instead walk away rather than trying to manipulate him.
Anytime you ever say that's insecure, that's controlling, any of that kind of language, you are now the one who's controlling. It's always a manipulation, because it's shaming language is always manipulation. If you're trying to shame someone, the reason why you're doing it is because you want to change the way that they act or behave. So I was going to talk about how, because this comes up all the time, and this is something that I would say it's we've talked about this before. It's a very popular thing for women to manipulate men with, when men do try to have standards or boundaries, right? Mm-hmm. And call them insecure or controlling and all of those things. And so I get a lot of times from a lot of the guys that I work with where they're like, is it all right for me to have, are my expectations too high, mm-hmm. right? But what they mean is, are my standards too high? Or that's what I correct them into. But a lot of guys are worried that, and even when we talk about some of the things like the 6 rules for the relationship that we put in, they're like, oh, well, no one would, she would never accept that, or no woman is going to accept that. And they feel like those are too high of, expectations, or too high of standards is what we'll call it. But my answer to all of that, whether you're male or female, it obviously applies both ways, but women generally have higher standards than men, like we talked about with the whole book talk thing fiasco, right? Women wouldn't accept the same thing that men will accept in general.
Right.
But whether you're male or female, when it comes to standards, you as a human being are entitled to like what you like and to not like what you don't like, and to choose who you have in your life and who you don't want to have in your life, and how you want your life to be and how you don't want it to be. And even if it's ridiculous to everyone else, even if I'm like, well, I want to whatever.
Forbid ice cream.
Right. Like if someone eats ice cream in my presence, then they are dead to me. All right. That might be ridiculous, but if I want to have that standard, no one can judge me. That's my choice. It might be foolish. I might cut off, but
you might have 0 friends.
But there's no point in arguing with me about it, because that's what I'm choosing, right? So it's like, you can choose whatever it is, no matter what you say it is. No one else has the right to choose, because it's your life, and you get to choose how you're going to live your life and who you're going to have in your life. And so no standard is ridiculous. It doesn't matter what it is. Now, if you choose standards of certain height, or like something like ridiculous, that there's something that is going to be perceived as ridiculous, then you're going to very much limit the number of people that will meet that standard. So that's something that you have to make a judgment about. But realistically, whatever you want, that's what goes.
Right. Well, when you were talking about how women call men controlling and insecure and all those things, it sparked an idea in my mind of how things should actually go, right? And you said women have higher standards typically. I would say yes, but also I feel like women have more expectations.
Yeah.
And that's why they come across manipulative, right? Because if you're one of these women with standards, and a man says something to you and you genuinely think it's controlling to the point you tell him that's controlling, your standard should kick in and be like, I don't want to be with someone like this, and you should instead walk away rather than trying to manipulate him
by calling
into doing what you want to do. You need to accept that, okay, let's say that a man's like, no girls night out, no guys night out thing. You are very against that. Instead of calling him controlling and trying to get him to change his mind, you need to say, I think we should go our separate ways. I wish you the best. And go find someone. Granted, I don't think it's a good idea to still be participating in these things. But I'm saying
first, but I'm
saying, instead of trying to alter, especially someone that wants to have a more like true monogamous and like sacred sort of relationship by not participating in those things, you should not be trying to bring him to your level. You should go find someone that follows the same standards as you.
Right.
And that's also why people have a lot of problems with our, content. And I get that they have different standards than us. But instead of calling somebody controlling or calling them whatever name you want to call them, you should just choose not to be with that person or not to be friends with them or whatever you want. Uphold your own standards rather than trying to control and put expectations on other people. Like, even when I'm in the comments talking to the other people, like, I will listen to anybody's point of view as long as they're respectful presenting it and they have actual logical explanations rather than this is stupid. Like, that is stupid. But the thing is that we're not putting expectations on people. We're not doing this podcast where we're expecting people to do exactly what we say.
Right. Yeah.
These are just our standards. They help us live a happier and healthier relationship and lives together. And that's why we're sharing it. And I think that if people actually upheld their standards, there'd be less calling people controlling or insecure and instead be like, look, I don't think we align very well. And I hope you find somebody that does align with your values and your standards.
Yeah.
And I wish you the best. And instead of trying to control people to do what we want to do. And that's why I think that women have more expectations because they're expecting men to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And that's why they say, hey, I'm, no, I don't like that. You're being controlling. You need to like calm down.
Yeah.
And like you said, if a man did that to them, though, they would walk away. But they don't realize that they're doing it to men and instead trying to justify it rather than just walking away themselves.
Exactly. And the thing about it, too, is that standards can be negotiated. Expectations can't, right? So in the instance where, let's say you're dating a guy and he says, yeah, I'm not big on no girls night out, guys night out. That's a standard that I have, right? Mm-hmm. You don't even just have to say, okay, we should go our separate ways. You could say, okay, well, let's have a discussion about it.
Right.
This is, my standard is that I don't want someone telling me what I can and cannot do. And his standard is, well, I don't want to be dating someone who's doing things that could jeopardize the relationship. And then you have a meeting of the minds. And at the end of the day, you get to decide if you're going to move your standard. Or maybe for this person is someone who you have a little bit of different standard for, which is okay. It is okay to do that, but you have to make the conscious choice of it, right? And that's the thing. But the expectation you can't negotiate because, it's what you expect, right?
Yeah.
So someone can manipulate you and browbeat you, but
it's also in your head,
right? Because the expectation remains. You can agree to something, and sometimes that happens in relationships. I can think of a scenario where I'm working with a guy where the woman agreed to a lot of things, but her expectations didn't change because her standards didn't change. There wasn't a true meeting of the minds in that case. So even though she agreed to those things, now she felt like they're obligations because she had expectations that never changed, right? So what really needed to happen was those expectations needed to be gotten rid of.
Right.
And a real decision needed to be made. Am I going to accept these things wholeheartedly? Are they going to become a standard? So that's where you can negotiate those things, but you have to start by getting rid of the expectation, because once you have the expectation, then you can't. There's nothing that someone can work with. The only thing you can do is manipulate and browbeat someone when you have that expectation. And unfortunately, like you said, that's what happens a lot of times, because anytime you ever say that's insecure, that's controlling, any of that kind of language, you are now the one who is controlling. Because what you're doing is that it's always a manipulation, because it's shaming language is always manipulation. If you're trying to shame someone, the reason why you're doing it is because you want to change the way that they act or behave, and so you're doing that for that purpose. It's not, So anytime you're doing that, it's
Right.